Elon Musk says the issue in the future isn't overpopulation, but a declining and aging population. What is your opinion on this statement? They call it the silver tsunami. The largest age group in the coming years will be people aged 65 and above, and they will remain so for decades to come. These elderly are not only illiterate when it comes to technology, in an age of which you could argue is a golden age for technology, which makes them easy targets for exploitation, scams, fake news, etc. They don't have that e-filter like the rest of us that basically grew up with a laptop phone in our hands. They also put an enormous stress on the welfare system. Let me say very clearly, this is not their fault, or anyone else's for that matter. We are just born in a country, do the best with the cards we are dealt, and that's that. But yeah, it's a very big problem. Or maybe I am wrong, I hope so. That's what I understand of it anyway. In no way, shape or form am I an expert on the subject. Hey, affordable housing possibly comes with declining and aging population. If ya don't want that, just give us affordable housing and childcare. Some of us are looking for stuff to be affordable, but when living isn't affordable, like the rise in housing costs, but the minimum wage never moving for 30 plus years or so, the population decline is inevitable, just like Thanos. Mostly because we can't afford to buy a house and raise 2 children. The only people I know around my age having children are mostly people who made bad decisions. It's true. I know that Japan is trying to address this before it becomes overwhelming by using AI and robots. Was in Japan this year. It's so weird, wherever you are there are hundreds of people, but people interaction is reduced to a minimum, so you could say you are alone in a big butt group of people. Think about Charlie Bucket's family in Willy Wonka. There was 1 kid, 2 adults, and an entire country king mattress full of bedridden grandparents. Society cannot function this way. It cannot support a retired class twice the size of the working class. It's not about how big the family is, it's about who can pitch in. If there aren't enough resources to go around, that's one thing. But the conditions don't matter if the family is flip-flopped. If something happens in the Bucket household and they lose one of the parents, Uncle Joe and all his cronies are going to die. The family values mean they won't just let that happen, so the entire house is going down with them. So, we need to make sure we keep the population in a comfortable distribution of age. Else, we will have to choose between the fabric of society or culling the elderly. Uncle Joe is a bastard, so I am for it either way. Our Grandpa Joe had. Economically, a declining human population is a problem. Ecologically, an increasing human population is a disaster. The real issue is the weighting of interests. This is the right answer. I'm more concerned about an ecological issue, as the economy means frick all when food shortages exist. Both are problems. Things worked out earlier because a population boom has a lot of young people. Now, we can either keep growing the population even more and have even worse overpopulation and even more issues later, or have a remotely balanced spread of ages and all the issues that come with it. One of these options postpones the problem for a later date. I don't think a declining and aging population will be a problem for a while. It's a problem now, at least in rural areas in Canada. Small towns are collapsing under the burden of geriatry. Rent in my town is about £600 $900 a month. A basic house is about 130k. A flat is about 90k. I can't afford to move out. Why would I want to try to raise a child I can't feed? Those prices sound like a dream to other people. Elon Musk wasn't the first person to say this. This has been known for decades, yet no one is doing a freaking thing about it. People always wait until the last minute to do something. That's just the nature of the human condition. We always think it's not our problem or it will never happen to us. That's the real problem. Elon is right, but he doesn't get a Nobel Peace Prize for saying it, either. This is basically demographics lecture 101, but people prefer to read a guy talking than actual theory and science. Old people are a huge drain of resources. Nobody wants to kill grandma though. The fact of the matter is we simply don't need as many people anymore in developed countries. Automation and industrialization means that one person today can do the work of 100 people 100 years ago. A declining population is not a problem for new generations, it is actually a benefit for them. It is a problem for older generations whose prosperity is based on constant growth of the population. It is a problem for older generations whose prosperity is based on constant growth of the population. Also an issue for older people who require caretakers assisted living. There aren't enough people to physically care for the elderly, much less economically. We're seeing declining birth rates in most developed nations, so that makes sense to me. Funny how in the face of a bleak and uncertain future people don't want to throw a kid into the mix. It's actually not due to a sense of despondency about the future, but rather that more people are receiving an adequate enough education to start careers, particularly in respect to women, who choose to have less children, and increasingly none at all, once they enter a career. Also, the global decline in infant child mortality means people don't need to have as many children. The humanity is going to die because no Reddit username will be available in 100 years. I took a food economics course a few years ago, and one of the interesting things is that we easily produce enough food to feed the whole world. Just so much is wasted that we don't. Civil wars cause a lot of food waste as well, since either side burns destroys the other's crop. Poor storage methods also wastes a lot of food. We can't environmentally all live like Westerners with our replace it and throw it out attitudes. But if we were accept a lower standard of living, then yes, we could have more people and it not be a problem. Logistics is the main reason we don't feed the whole world. What happens when we cure cancer and everyone starts living to be 100 plus? No such thing as cure cancer. Cancer comes in 1,000 different forms. It's like saying cure death. You can die in a fire or of old age, but death will get you. If an organism lives long enough, it will get cancer somehow. Cancer rates have risen, most likely due to rising lifespan of humans. Also because we detect cancer more than before. I prefer a declining population over overpopulation. Overpopulation means more resources needed, which means more logging, mining, pollution, etc. Japan is the best example of the declining and aging population. The population has been going down and is equal to about what it was in 1999. People aren't having kids and the old are living longer. I bet we will see this trend hit other parts of the world as well. A lot of younger people aren't having kids or are only having one child. An aging population is only relatively, on a scale of several decades, short-term local economic issue. Overpopulation is a global and a long-term issue. A big problem is how the main source of overpopulation is developing countries, who don't actually give a crap about it. One day we'll have a much more stable and evenly distributed population, and at that point, we should stop having these issues. I think most of our problems are actually symptoms of overpopulation, and overpopulation is really the root of most of the other problems. It's like when you have the flu and you're producing a crap load of snot and coughing a ton. In this analogy, overpopulation is the flu and pollution, overfishing, etc. is the snot cough. What we're doing is just trying to blow all the snot out of our nose or treat the cough. But if we just got rid of the virus, it would stop all the other symptoms. For the sake of argument, let's say the world population is 10 million, yes. Extremely low just for proof of concept. If the population was 10 million, we could burn as much coal as we want, use as much water as we want, cut as many trees as we want, catch as many fish as we want, because the ecosystem would replace them fast enough. Most of our problems aren't really a problem at a smaller scale. The atmosphere can take some pollution and be okay volcanoes. Trees can be cut down and the forest will replenish. Fish could be farmed to heart's content. What's happening to this is what happens to any other animal on the planet when they start unbalancing their ecosystem. For example, if a forest gets overpopulated with wolves, then they will start to run out of prey and the wolf population starts decreasing again. I think overpopulation is absolutely a problem. I feel like 90% of our other problems are a result of overpopulation. Just some random Redditor. I definitely don't know for sure. I'll happily listen to why this line of thought is wrong. On mobile, so sorry for formatting mistakes. True. As former third and second world countries become technologically advanced and educated, people will want better lives and thus, better jobs. They will subsequently end up having less children, along with cleaner, healthier living and better medicine. The average lifespan in these countries will also increase, so we end up with less people living longer. This is a normal phenomenon. In the West, jobs opportunities are scarce and wages aren't good enough to consent a booming population, so the population starts declining in order to solve these problems. This of course causes a massive problem with pensions, which should also start to going down in value and number, but are kept alive by the governments because of their massive influence on elections. The future generations will have to pay massive debts and pensions in order to keep the standards of living for the elderly, crippling furthermore the natality of those countries, to the point that unilateral decisions must be made to prevent a complete collapse of both country and citizens. Overpopulation is a problem in most of the developing countries, but when the Western economies will start to involve, this will be mostly solved because without foreign investments these countries don't have the capitals to develop further, and their population will also decline even more significantly when they hit stagflation. Having grown up in Finland and having to have listened to this whole population is aging and declining and it's very bad, please all women push out babies balls all my life. I admit I thought this was the kind of convo that was going on most of Western world all the time. But yes, well, on country work market keeping old people alive view it as bad, population is declining, because we will lack proper resources for taking care of those who are unable to work, which is frankly scary. But honestly, we are already killing the planet, so I don't like the thought of overpopulation either. Both are problematic situations, on their own ways. I think we shouldn't be getting opinions from Elon Musk. I think we shouldn't be getting opinions from Elon Musk and Reddit. The problem is less how many people there are, but more the resource usage of those people, and the biggest factor there is economic inequality. There is more than enough wealth, that is, resources available for human use, to give everyone a decent and productive life. The problem is, most of it is concentrated in a few dozen hands, which wastes most of that wealth, and on the other hand there are billions of people who don't have the resources to put their minds and hands to use in any productive way, wasting their potential. I agree. My country is already troubled with large numbers of elderly people living off the system, and the amount of old people will keep increasing for decades to come. I'm starting to wonder if there's any point in staying. It's both, honestly. Overpopulation will cause food supply shortages while the lack of newer folks will cause older people care end-of-life care issues. Only in the first world is there a declining and aging population. There are still plenty of young people in third world countries, which is why reducing immigration is such a colossally stupid idea. Who do those old people think are going to work to pay the taxes to fund their social security? An aging population is a necessary occurrence as the global population settles to a sustainable level. It still creates a crisis. Even at the current levels we do not have enough workers to care for the increased number of elderly, especially in home care. As their number balloons we will have even more of a problem. It's fact, based upon current statistical trends. Already, the entire first world has a birth rate below replacement. The inevitable result is a declining, aging population. Nobody seems to want to solve the problem because most people assume overpopulation is the issue, so they shut down anyone who claims otherwise. My opinion is that we should stop taking Elon Musk's every tweet and comment as gospel. He's a smart dude, but there are tons of times when he is talking out of his butt. Dude is not very intelligent. He just started out with a lot of seed money that his parents made profiting off of apartheid. Issue of the future is Elon Musk and his friends hoarding wealth. Overpopulation isn't a problem if all people use as much resources as the median human, even in the West. Overpopulation becomes a problem when the uber rich spend more and cause more pollution than a few countries. With the wealth Musk and others have stolen from their employees, even an aging population could be sustained. Exactly. Agriculture produces enough food to feed 13 billion people, yet due to capitalism and the hoarding of resources by certain countries and the elite, the majority of that food never gets eaten, and doesn't get evenly distributed throughout the world. There's a lot of misinformation in this thread. The most accurate forecasts we have, and I'm getting this information from Hans Rosling's book Factfulness, predict that population growth will stop at 11 billion people. The world can support that many people. The population won't keep growing infinitely. That is just scaremongering. I don't think that a declining population is any issue whatsoever, unless it's declining in a way other than population. Most developed countries are facing this problem. The problem isn't really the declining population, but having a much smaller, tax-paying working force supporting the increasingly larger aging population. Often, it requires multiple working citizens to fully cover one retired person, assuming they've had little to no retirement. I think it's true, and our current system that relies on perpetual growth is unsustainable. If it's true, we had better legalize and facilitate euthanasia. Loads of people in homes today don't want to be here anymore. It's their body, their life, their choice. Elderly nursing caregivers are mainly women, and we are only half the population, and many of us want to make more than $12 to $18 an hour. Unless wages or genders change drastically, there is going to be a huge problem in 10 to 15 years. You have been visited by the Wealth Rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.